What's up guys, Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind, and today we will be reviewing Batman Forever. So without further ado, let's get into it. The character development in this film does not exist because hardly any of the characters get any real development. Batman's main storyline in this film is Bruce Wayne wondering whether he would be better off just being Bruce Wayne and giving up on the Batman alter ego altogether, and that's kind of the main thread that Batman has in this film. However, it's not handled very well. You don't really see him having any conflicting views about whether he should give up being Batman or not. You kind of just get the feeling he wants to do this because he has a love interest and he doesn't want to put her in danger or something. I don't really know. Batman's character development is just rubbish in this film. He hardly gets any. The villains' development, well, let's just say the motives for the villains are something that I would have expected to see in the Adam West TV series rather than a full-length motion picture Batman film. Two-Face and the Riddler get very poor development. You kind of understand why they hate Batman and Bruce Wayne, although I don't really understand why they're doing what they're doing. Probably the character which gets the most development in this film is Robin, because obviously his parents die in this film and he wants to get revenge on Two-Face. So Robin probably has the most character development, but even his development is not really fleshed out or not. The problem with the development of the characters in this film is none of them really, you don't understand any of their storylines. And by the end of the film, they don't seem to have learned anything or any different. So the character development's going to get a 2 out of 10 because it is very, very poor in this film. As for the performances, well, they are a mixed bag. Now, Val Kilmer does okay in the role of Bruce Wayne and Batman, despite not really having much of a personality. There's nothing about Val Kilmer which makes me think that he is Batman or he is Bruce Wayne. Keaton had that. There was something about Michael Keaton which you could just get the sense that he was Batman. Val Kilmer has none of that. It's kind of a very bland performance. He doesn't seem to really be trying to make it his own. However, in terms of the performances, his performance is probably the best one when you consider some of the others. Tommy Lee Jones' portrayal of Two-Face is an insult to the character. I don't know why they decided to portray such a complex, layered and tragic character as Two-Face into some kind of 1960s Adam West over-the-top villain. It's laughably bad because this is not Two-Face. This villain Tommy Lee Jones is playing cannot be Two-Face because it's so over the top. It's just ridiculous. He really didn't understand the character and obviously he gave a very bad performance in the role. Jim Carrey as the Riddler is okay, yeah. You can see Jim Carrey as the Riddler. It kind of has an essence of Frank Gorshin's portrayal of the Riddler in Adam West's TV show. However, I think that the Riddler gets a bit too much screen time and Jim Carrey seems to just kind of be doing whatever the hell he wants. So I think the performances in this film, especially of the villains, is particularly bad. The standout bad performance is, of course, Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face because that is just awful. I don't understand what the hell they were thinking with the direction they went with Two-Face in this film. And the other cast members, Nicole Kidman as Dr. Chase Meridian and Chris O'Donnell as Robin, do an okay job, but they don't really get anything to really do in this film. So I'm going to give the performances a 2 out of 10 because, quite frankly, the way that the villains are portrayed in this film is very, very bad. The effects in this film are okay. I think the main problem is that this film is such a stark contrast from the two which came before it that it feels very hard to believe that this is set in the same universe. The problem I have with some of the effects in this film is it does feel a bit cartoony and over the top just in terms of some of the designs they did. Two-Face's costume design does seem a tiny bit over the top and just doesn't really It doesn't really go well for me. I think Two-Face should look a lot simpler compared to what they did to him in this film. So I think the effects are alright. Do they hold up? Kind of. However, I just think the effects make this film look more like a cartoon. So it kind of enforces that over-the-top atmosphere which this film has. So I'm going to give the effects a 6 out of 10 because they're alright. They're not bad. The story and writing for this film is absolutely atrocious. This film's plot is basically about Riddler wanting to get a special box put on every TV in the world which will suck out people's intelligence so he can grow smarter. This plot is funny because it is so ridiculous. When you think of the more grounded plots, especially that the first film had, this just seems completely out of nowhere. Honestly, when I see this film, I feel like I'm watching an adaptation of the Adam West Batman series because it's just so out there. Nothing really makes sense. And I found this film very long. You can sometimes watch a film and it will fly by because you're invested in it. With this film, it doesn't really feel like that. It feels like it takes a very long time for this film to actually progress because there's just not enough keeping the viewer invested. Half of this film is Batman taking down Two-Face and having some really bad kind of fight scenes between Two-Face goons and Batman and all of that. And then Riddler shows up and then they're working together. And to be honest, the story and writing is a big problem in this film because it just feels like a cartoon. It doesn't feel like a grounded movie. And as I've already said, if you think about the two films which came before it, this film just doesn't feel like it's set in the same universe. The story is very, very bad. It's just way too over the top. So the story and writing, I'm going to give a 2 out of 10 because it's far too over the top. It just feels like a cartoon. So for this film's special recognition, I'm just going to talk about how different this film is from the previous two. And I know I've gone on about it a lot in this movie review. However, I do think it is important because this film is supposed to be set in the same universe as the ones with Michael Keaton in. Because you see the same actors playing Alfred and Commissioner Gordon. So this is definitely set in the same universe. And it's supposed to be a continuation of the story. And it just doesn't work. Because you cannot see this film taking place in the same settings that Batman and Batman Returns took place in. Not just because those films were more gothic and a bit darker. However, this one just feels like too colourful and too much of a contrast. I would feel better if they said that this film was a complete reboot. They didn't reference anything that happened in Batman and Batman Returns and just made it a new film, basically, a rebooted film. However, they don't do that because there's a couple of references to Catwoman in this film, so you know this is supposed to be a continuation of the story. This film is an insult to the Batman franchise. I think people forget how bad Batman Forever is because of what came after it, Batman and Robin. Although this film has very, very bad things in it. It has some laughably bad performances, especially on Two-Face, who is played atrociously in this film. So Batman Forever, I would say, is one of the worst Batman films and even one of the worst comic book films I have ever seen, because the problem is that this film showed audiences that comic book films don't have to be taken seriously, and it set back comic book films for years because this film made out that comic book films have to be made for kids. They don't have to be made for adults. And this film feels like it was made for kids. So this special recognition is going to get a 1 out of 10 because it is films like this which made studios feel that comic book films cannot be made for adults. And they just thought, oh, we'll just go for the kid audience. And the kids like over-the-top and funny stuff. So in conclusion, Batman Forever is one of the worst comic book films I have ever seen. It has very bad character development, the performances are laughable, and in terms of the story and writing, they basically made this film for children and didn't care about the adult audience members that they got from the previous two Batman films. And that is why Batman Forever gets a very well-deserved 13 out of 50, which gives it a grade 5 ranking. Honestly, this film is really, really bad, and you would think that they couldn't make anything worse than this. but you would be wrong. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope that you enjoyed my Batman Forever movie review. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future, and I will see you in another one. See ya!